This is Roger Simon.
And Lionel Chetwynd.
Welcome back to Poliwood. In a moment, we'll have Matt Atchity and Rotten Tomatoes with the movies that are coming up. But right now, Lionel and I are going to discuss one of the first big hits of the Oscar season, Argo. What did you think of the film, Lionel?
I loved it. Now, to my surprise, for reasons I will give you later. The film deals with the 6 Americans who were employed in our embassy in Tehran when the Khomeiniist crowds took over.
1979.
1979. The Carter administration eventually found their way to the home of Ambassador Ken Taylor, who's Canada's ambassador to Iran, and at great risk, his own life, Ken Taylor and his wife and his staff, they kept those people for the longest time and eventually got them out. It's shown a little differently in the film, but that's okay. I think it was a necessary choice. I did a film about it, the original one.
Who did you do it for? For television?
CBS. It was a big CBS special. It's called Escape from Iran, the Canadian Caper. In that connection, I interviewed Jean Pelletier. The La Presse bureau chief in Washington got the story. He sat on it. He didn't report it. And eventually we interviewed him. Later, all the Americans said, oh, we had it too. Well, they didn't. He got it because I think he got it out of Ottawa. What happened when these Americans were separated? It's not quite as it's shown in the film, but one of them got to the Canadians. The Canadians went and found them, got them together, and got them to the ambassador's house, which was probably the last place the Iranians would actually burst in and search. They got them out at the time. The cover story was that they got them out as Canadian grain merchants because Canada was selling all the wheat to Iran. The plan had been by the Carter administration to then take them to a safe house and hide them in Florida until everyone got out. They didn't want it known that some had gone out, but in fact, Pelletier broke the story, and so they were allowed to go home to their. I interviewed them all.
So the whole thing,
I interviewed 4 of the 6,
right? Now the whole
and Ken Taylor, whom I knew,
right.
So I knew what went on.
So here, since you knew what went on, then the whole thing about the making of the movie is a fabrication, or not?
No.
So in other words, where you made it, the information was out that it was something different?
They said they were grain merchants. In fact, what had happened was they had disguised them as a Canadian film crew. The passports that they used were not forgeries. They were issued by Canada. The Queen, with the cabinet, declared these people to be Canadian citizens by reasons of sanctuary and issued them real passports. They were not forged at all. It was an extraordinary act by the Canadians to save them. The film concentrates on it as if somehow it were more American. That's understandable. If you're not an American, you know there's a genre film called the Yanks Won the War movie. Sahara, it was all Americans, so there were really none at that time. But in any event, the film itself blew me away. I expected it to be largely propaganda. First of all, as a film, it is faultless. The ending in which you know what's happening, you know what the outcome is, but I don't know about you, but at that ending, I sat there and I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew what happened, and I'm amazed at Affleck's craft. It blew me away. I didn't like the historical prologue, which maybe you want to address the flaws in that. But the best part of the film for me was that at the very end, Carter got cold feet, and he tried to cancel this. Within hours of these people going to it would have cost them their lives. It would have been the end of Kenny Taylor. He would have been dead. His wife would have been dead. Everyone would have been dead. Although they still have, you're gonna love liberals, you know. We eat our own, they look after them. The last thing in the movie is Carter coming, Carter's voice saying, well, we got him out without bloodshed. Really, what happened to the helicopters? And I had no thanks to you. So it's a terrific film. The way it varies is not a problem. It does show how feckless Carter was, how he's willing to let people die for his political.
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. On the other hand, it resurrects Carter in a kind of bogus manner, as you know, right in the roll-up. I actually think that to the lay audience, the ones not like us who are watching this like a hawk, I should maybe not say that, I think that they will not have that much attitude toward Carter about it at all. And you were asking about the prologue. Seems a little tacked on, maybe after audience screenings or something. For the sake of the 99% of the audience doesn't even know about who Khomeini was or any of this stuff, that it makes the Americans look like the traditional bad guys with the British for overthrowing Mossadegh That's a real, what the French call it, simplicisme. It's utterly, overly simplifying what was a very complex situation with the Soviets at the time and a lot of other things. And it would have been better filmed without it on, I think. I certainly agree with you. The other parts of the film were beautifully shot, and Affleck is a good actor. He's one hell of a director, and that's some terrific action filmmaking.
I thought the art direction, first of all, at the end, they do a series of side-by-side stills throughout the film showing the verisimilitude of how they shot it in Turkey. But there are people, Iranians I know, who thought it was shot in Tehran. It was brilliantly reconstructed. The editing is remarkable. All tech credits, Boffo, no. That film is the best piece of art direction I've seen in the longest time. And the Alan Krantz, is wonderful. The performances
and costume,
are wonderful.
by the way, costume. I mean, the way everybody was dressed and their haircut did remind you of what a tragic era in hairstyle the 70s was.
Yeah, except I thought about that and I thought, I had glasses exactly like that. And it occurred to me that they didn't go over the top. The other thing worth watching in this film, there is one scene, it's an extended scene, where these people are in a room and they're being harangued in Farsi by a passerand, by a Revolutionary Guard. It's not subtitled. You don't know what he's saying. He's not screaming, but it is terrifying. And you start, that's why I want to know what he's saying. What's he saying? Oh my God, what's he saying? Oh my God. He really draws you into what it must be like to be on Mars and with these people talking.
I believe
at you.
it, and look, the movie's going to be a big hit. It's going to get lots of. It is a big hit. It's going to get lots of praise at Oscar time, and lots of nominations and awards and all that. And all I can say is bravo for Affleck, and another reminder of something that we talk about a lot on this show, and that is that people on our side of the political fence, because Affleck, I don't know what his real his politics are not as flagrantly bad as his buddy Matt Damon.
No, I don't think so.
But
couldn't be.
It couldn't be because he's making a movie about fracking. In filmmaking, quality and artistic ability first, politics down the line. If you can't deliver a movie on the level of this or close, it doesn't matter what your politics.
You do realize the extent to which the whole Hollywood theme is really tacked on. That's not what the action is, whether. But you know
it's
what?
Almost opera
Watching Alan Arkin. Watching Alan Arkin.
You're reminded how great that guy is.
Gosh,
he is one
go
funny
see
guy.
it just to watch him, and John Goodman was wonderful. I mean, and they capture moments in Hollywood.
But Arkin in that world stole the show. And of course it was shticky and not really real, but it was fine and it was
let
fun.
me ask you this. What would you say the politics of this film are?
Well, I think other than that tacked on Mossadegh thing at the beginning, like a
buying into we're responsible for the shot.
We're the bad guys. And the silly thing with Carter at the end, I would say I have no problem with the politics of this. I thought it was a great action adventure, and it was quite patriotic because you're rooting for the Americans at the end and the Canadians.
Okay.
It's a good, you may feel slighted as a Canadian here, but you really feel
former
good.
Canadian.
You're right, but
I feel good for
Canada.
our side. Now I want to say one thing, which is because as I was listening, I had my own answer. I realized when I was interviewing, I interviewed 4 of the 6 hostages. I went to Washington, and I had a special pass. I go up to the State Department. I'm here to go to the crisis center, and the woman was like, "Which one? Afghanistan, Iran?" It was the height. It was 19.
Now there are more of them.
It was not well. Yeah, thank you. So I go in, and there's one guy. And I said to him, and you're in this, it's got mirrors, right? The dark mirrors. You're being watched, you're being filmed. And I said, how do you feel? What would you say the film should indicate about the conduct of our administration during this thing? And he kind of looked at me like, look at the mirrors. I said, let me put it another way. Is there anything? What would you like the American people to know? Watch this film. He said, I want them to know. He said that in the real world, not the world of the Beltway, but in the real world, only strength is admired and weakness is only despised. And I said, would you ever go back? He said, yeah, in a B-52, I'll go back. I mean, there was a sense of anger that we had been impotent. Anyone who's just, because if you go on Wikipedia, you get this version of history. Mossadegh was a secular, humanist who was displaced by the CIA. He came to power with an election forced by the murder of the constitutional president, murdered by the MEK.
MEK, I believe it was a communist force.
It was a communist. He was a communist.
Or maybe an early
and
version
he wanted to move Iran into the communist sphere with all of that oil. And we did not have oil interests, by the way. We didn't. It was the British. That was the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Wasn't Aramco. But anyway, all of that aside, I just think and Affleck's performance, by the way,
excellent.
Never been that good.
Shakespeare in Love You was pretty good. Anyway, and now over to Matt Atchity at Rotten Tomatoes for what's coming up.
Hi, I'm Matt Atchity, editor-in-chief of RottenTomatoes.com. I'm here to let you know what's fresh and what's rotten in theaters this weekend. First up is a movie called Cloud Atlas, directed by Andy and Lana Wachowski, the directors of the Matrix trilogy, and it's co-directed by Tom Tykwer, who's a German director, directed one of my favorite movies, a little film called Run Lola Run. He's done a few other movies. This is a really interesting film. Now, the critics are kind of split on it. 65% on the tomato meter. That does mean it's fresh, but this movie's kind of out there, I have to warn you. I do think it's worth seeing, but it's almost 3 hours long. It can be confusing. This is not the kind of movie where you go and have a couple of cocktails before you see it. It tells 6 different stories, kind of all at the same time, and they're set across different time periods. It's not like something like an Altman film where they weave in and out on the same day. This takes place across centuries. I found it to be really interesting. It's fascinating the way the emotional levels build up on each other across the different stories, but ultimately it doesn't quite come together. So I think this is a neat movie. It's worth watching, but it's definitely flawed. Next up, Fun Size is a movie for teenagers and junior high age students. It's set in a high school. It's about a girl played by Victoria Justice, who gets stuck on Halloween night with her 8-year-old or 7-year-old brother instead of having to go to the party she wants to go to. And she loses her little brother and hijinks ensue. So it's a little bit of Adventures in Babysitting mixed in with kind of some of the classic John Hughes movies. I found a lot to like in this movie. I think it was very funny, although I have to tell you, the parent in me was horrified. This is the kind of movie that I think as an adult with children, you're going to just cringe because the kid gets lost. He gets in cars with strangers, riding around without a seatbelt. He's taking candy from people he don't know. It's every parent's nightmare. He ends up at a nightclub dancing with slutty girls. It's crazy. That being said, I think some teenagers are going to like this. The critics are kind of, not that wild about it. It's only 38% on the tomato meter, but I think that if your teens are asking you to go see this, it's pretty safe that they'll probably like it, but don't go yourself if you have children. Like I said, you'll be horrified. Next up is the surf movie Chasing Mavericks. It stars Gerard Butler as a longtime surfer who teaches a 15-year-old kid about the Mavericks surf break. Now, if you're not from California or you're not familiar with this, this is this huge break up in Santa Cruz, and the waves get up to like 20, 30 feet. Very dangerous. In fact, Gerard Butler was injured on the set of this, on the waves as they were surfing. Critics are kind of split on this, 47% on the tomato meter. That's definitely rotten. They say that it sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those things that if you really want to see Gerard Butler surfing, then you might have a good time, but apart from that, you may want to skip it. That's it for this week. For all the latest movies in theaters and on DVD, make sure to check RottenTomatoes.com.
Thanks, Matt. Well, that's it for this week. This is Roger Simon.
And Lionel Chetwynd.
Next week in Poliwood.